Let's get back to some of the basic assumptions we're making here. A century or so before the framing of the Constitution, King James I of England had argued that really only a king responsible to God, not to this amorphous idea of the people, whatever that is, could truly guarantee liberty of all of his subjects. That was attractive to some of the founders, perhaps. What's attractive about that idea?
I think perhaps what is attractive about that is the idea of having protection in your government. Hobbes actually advocated an absolute monarch, and he was defending the absolute monarchs like King James I. And I think what that really does establish is the protection and the balance, and also just the unity within the country. You have a very protective. If you have a very protective absolute monarch, then he can institute balance for the citizens.
However, I think it's important to note what exactly this power would be. Would it be a king, such as in Great Britain? Would it be an emperor or a dictator, such as in the Roman Republic, or when it turned into the Roman Empire? Or would it be Thomas Hobbes' notion of a Leviathan? Because in each of these different systems, they abuse or use their power differently.
I think it's also important to look at what if said king or sovereign does not protect the interests of the people, is not doing that job that King James laid out. And I think we saw this definitely in the Roman Republic after they overthrew the monarch and set up a system where the noble class was in control, supposedly representing the interests of the plebeians, the people, the common people. And they said, no, we're not going to serve and fight for you if we're not represented. And that's why they had their own representation. I think we also see this today in Arizona, where the federal government is protecting neither the life, liberty, nor property of the people of Arizona, and that's why they're taking over their own border patrol.
So let me follow that up. If I may. Since you raised the issue of Thomas Hobbes, Hobbes argued that any revolution is wrong because even tyranny is better than returning to the state of nature, of chaos and dissolution. Did the founders take Hobbes seriously, even if they didn't take James I seriously? Were they creating a state? Did they believe they were creating a system that would favor stability over the will of the people?
They thought that the government that they were creating would be a lasting government because they set up checks and balances, as can be seen through the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch.
The thing about it is the founders were believers in the right of revolution, John Locke, and that's part of what spurred the writing of the Declaration of Independence. Although Thomas Jefferson does acknowledge in the Declaration of Independence that prudence indeed will dictate governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, he then goes on to say how King George has usurped power and has committed a long train of abuses, and in that case it is essential for the people to speak out and it lead to revolution, perhaps.
I think that very reason is why they did institute a republic, because they feared anarchy and they feared tyrannical opposition.
Well,
So,
I want to push you on that just a little bit
Okay.
to keep this conversation going. Objecting to what King George was doing was a complete straw man argument, a system of parliamentary supremacy in England at the time. James Madison's Virginia plan was a parliamentary system. What do we have against parliamentarianism?
Well, I think one of the things that the founders were upset about and the revolutionaries were upset about is they were being denied their basic rights of Englishmen.
So Parliament was oppressing them because of the system of taxation.
Yes.
Did the Roman Republic have a way of dealing with that problem that we did or should have emulated, do you think?
with taxation or representation?
Both.
The Roman Republic definitely dealt with representation. You can see it almost has somewhat of a bicameral legislature, as we would with the plebeian council and then the patricians, the Senate being from the patricians. So they dealt with the different sources of representation, even though there was an ongoing struggle between the plebeians and the patricians.
So there was class representation in the Roman Republic. Is that something, when you said that we emulated its system of separated powers and checks and balances, is that something you think the founders deliberately did in the United States, make sure that classes would be represented in our structural form of government?
I think initially that wasn't much kept in mind, as the people who could vote would be landowners and they had to be men. Like, it's very evident that there was a bunch of discrimination, especially with slaves, African Americans, women.
You probably have come across Edward Gibbons, The History of the Decline of the Roman Empire. And he placed the blame for the decline of the empire and the loss of civic virtue among Roman citizens. He ascribed two factors. He ascribed one, the rise of Christianity, making the population less interested in the worldly here and now and more willing to wait for the rewards of heaven. He also ascribed the decline and fall of the Roman Empire to the loss of economic opportunity. So if you look around the United States today, you see an economy and you see areas of the country where people are walking away from their responsibilities and letting banks take over homes, which of course becomes an individual issue versus the cost to society. So you have that trade-off between natural rights, if you will, and civic virtue. Do you agree with Gibbons?
I do not agree. I think the main problem for why the Roman Republic fell was because it was centered in Italy, and then all of a sudden they started conquering these lands, spreading throughout the Mediterranean, and the government was not able to have power over these people, and it was just getting too widespread and they couldn't control them.
I think another reason that the Roman Republic led to a Roman Empire is because there was inner turmoil and civil war ensuing during the first and second triumvirates. You had Tiberius Gracchus, who was trying to advocate the will of the people, and you had the patrician class who was completely disregarding the will of the people, and so that caused a lot of inner turmoil and dispute within the Roman Republic itself.